I'm your host, Anslem, and this is Human in the Loop, a podcast where we never chase hype and we always put humans first. Now let's get right to it. Welcome to Human in the Loop, the Mind for Mission podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Liz Rafferty. How's it going, Liz?
It's great, Anslem. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Today, I think, is a very important conversation that we're going to have because if you've been on LinkedIn or Instagram or any social media platform, or you have a pulse, you know AI is upon us. Like, we're looking at videos, we don't know if they're AI. Hiring is largely led by AI. Everyone wants faster, more, better, more efficient, right? Driving capitalism and everything else. And, Mind for Mission, which I want to talk about a little bit. Mind for Mission exists to help mission-driven organizations, primarily nonprofits. As you know, Liz, my background has been predominantly in nonprofit leadership, doing mission-driven work. And one of the things that we've talked about consistently, Liz, is that nonprofits are often burdened or tasked with repairing the harm that for-profit organizations cause. They are given finite resources, and they often have limited capacity and bandwidth to try to solve these issues, right? So we talk about under-resourced, marginalized, and the people doing a lot of the work are often, the same. And people doing a lot of the work for these mission-driven organizations and nonprofits are often same, under-resourced. So I think, as we kind of shift to AI and its role in that, it really has the power to be a multiplier, an equalizer, if you will, if the moment isn't missed. Because as I, have talked to you as well about, Liz, I think sometimes the gaps that exist, maybe not even sometimes, often the gaps that exist were created intentionally by policy. And AI is a tool, I think, because of all of the hype and because of so much wealthied and financial interest in it, isn't thinking about those policy decisions right now. It's just moving and everyone's trying to keep up. And I believe that AI as a tool can help these organizations that are limited in bandwidth and resources close the gap. So that's what we want to do at Mind for Mission. We want to partner with those organizations. We want to help them, not fear AI, but leverage it and hopefully close some of these gaps. And I want to shift the conversation to what that might look like and what closing the gap looks like on a policy perspective, organizing perspective, democratic perspective. So now that you know a little bit about Mind for Mission, I think it's important to introduce our guest. His name is Christian Perry. He's an organizer. He is former military, always military, right? Always military. He is a political advocate. I could go on and into his accolades, but I want you, Christian, to tell the listeners, viewers, who you are. Describe them, how you would want them to know you.
No, for sure. Well, first off, gratitude to you, brother, for reaching out, for even thinking I might have something worthwhile to say about what you and Liz are endeavoring to do when it comes to ensuring that people are at the center of all the change going on in technology, AI, trying to figure out how we do that with the human in mind. Yes. I think that's really dope work. But yeah, you said it. For those that are watching, let's see, I got my White Sox hat on, proudly repping where I'm from on the South Side, even though we up here right next to Wrigley Field. I won't give you a hard time for that.
Appreciate it.
But yeah.
All Chicago.
We love all of Chicago.
That's right.
We love all of Chicago, and the good guys play on the South Side. We love all of Chicago.
Had to get that in there.
But yeah, so like you said, man, I'm an organizer. The best way to understand my work is, I tell people, two buckets. I'm an organizer and I'm a coach, right? From the South Side of Chicago, West Pullman neighborhood. And the reason why those two things work together is in my career, right, I didn't know I was organized. I didn't know, now it's like kind of sexy to like say organizer. Obama kind of made it cool, right? Like, oh, I'm an organizer. And there's, for people that do the work, like we sometimes take a look at people who are wearing that title, like, huh, interesting. But I tell people, I have knocked doors. I take joy out of knocking doors, made phone calls, send text messages, bring people together. But that started for me, you mentioned my military background, 13 years in the world's finest Navy. I didn't know that just because you bring people together and people want to do something that you say like, hey, let's do this, that's like an organizer. Like I didn't know that there was language or a title for something like that. Right. So I'm in the Navy, people are sad. I grew up in church singing choir. Why don't we start a ship choir? I didn't think that was Christian being an organizer, right? Bringing people together over common purpose. But that's kind of how, I've stumbled my way into this career. I go to college, get a degree in political science, and really began my maturation on my leadership journey. Right. So like my story, I won't take up too much time sharing my story, but 4 high schools, 4 years, 1.8 GPA, don't walk across the stage. Stuff was kind of rough going into the Navy, right? Estranged from my family, trying to figure myself out. So I never like when people would say, and you've probably experienced this, Anslem, like if you have a gift at like speaking or bringing people together, like, oh, you a leader. I'm like, man, I can't tie my shoes. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't be trying to label me like some lead. Like, I don't want that responsibility. Yeah. Right. So I spent the lion's share of my adult life actually running away from that title. And it wasn't until the birth of my son at the age of 21, I'm coming home from active duty. And I was like, man, I ain't got no choice but to lead this dude. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. So I got to start figuring out like what that means for me. And in college, Black Student Union president, multicultural leadership chair. I coached college basketball for 5 years. So that's where the coach part comes in. People are like, well, why are you coach? Well, what I do is I love encouraging people. Mm-hmm. I love pouring into people. I love helping people access their genius. I love reminding people of the inherent power within to actually drive change. And doing that with the sport that I love, with young Black boys from the south side of Chicago that didn't know that they could get paid to go to school up the street. I'm like, man, absolutely. So I thought that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life.
Best laid plans.
Right. That's what I thought. I'm like, man, Gino Oriema got a degree in political science and he coached. Like, that's what I'm going to do. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, get this degree in political science, empower young people through the game of basketball. Well, what happened was my son graduated from pre-K. I go into Little Footsteps Academy in the south suburbs of Chicago, and the owner is at her desk crying. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, just like couldn't control herself. And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, what's going on? She's like, we have to close. I'm like, why do you got to close? And she's like, well, because of the budget impasse. So at this time, the state of Illinois had a governor that was in a fight with the Speaker of the House of Illinois and decided that they weren't going to pass a budget for 2 years. We're one of the only states in the union that's ever happened. Like, states have to pass budgets. But for 2 years, the state of Illinois didn't. Because of that child care facility didn't get the money that they needed to keep their doors open, pay their teachers. So a school that my son got a phenomenal education at for 3 years of his life heading into kindergarten was closing. And I tell people that was one of the first times I recognized policy was like hitting me in my house. Right. Because if I was a little late, my son might not have made it out. Yeah. Right. Now there's a bunch of kids that won't get that opportunity. So fast forward, I started making phone calls, door knocking. Governor's team thinks I do a good job at that. They hire me as an organizer. Governor J.B. Pritzker. Yep. So I worked on JB Round 1 as a field organizer, and then started my career in government. Went to the county, I was the director of external affairs and communications for a county commissioner. So worked there, and then went back to the state. Worked on criminal justice policy, so helped pass the marijuana legalization bill, helped stand up the R3 program, get the tax dollars that come from cannabis sales back into the hands of people that were harmed by the war on drugs. So got to understand like grant making, no-fos from the government side, community building from the government side. And then the governor decided he wanted to run for re-election. So I got a call and he was like, hey, we want you to come back to the campaign. And I'm like, All right. So I go back second time around, and I was the deputy political director for J.B. Pritzker and Juliana Stratton on their last reelect. So that was 2022. And then while this is all happening, I got a friend, a mentor, a brother that's had this crazy idea to run for mayor. He launched his campaign running at 2.3%, polling at 2.3%. And he's like, hey, I think I got a shot. And I'm like, and this dude is one of the most dynamic, one of the most genuine, empathetic leaders that you'll ever come across. You know, an organizer that I look up to that, you know, took me under his wing as a young black man who had a progressive politic and who also was serious about his faith. Those three things don't always coincide.
Right.
But he's like, yeah, man, if I got the support I need and my wife says it's okay, I'm running. So he runs, and we check in from time to time, monthly. He's asking for tidbits, advice, some faith organizing, some field stuff, and I'm answering, but I'm on the governor's race. I'm like, hey, I can't leave because I got to get this. I got to get this one across the line. But every time you call, I'll answer. And I'll never forget one of our last calls in early February. He goes, hey, I'm gonna make it to the runoff, and when I do, I need you. And I was like, dude, you make it to the runoff, I'm there.
I got you.
And sure enough, that joker made it to a runoff, and it was the craziest 8 weeks of my life, helping Brandon Johnson secure 52% and become the 57th mayor of the city of Chicago. So that my work kind of spans, you know, we didn't even talk about my nonprofit, my small business, but like what I do is I try to figure out what my responsibility is to the people that poured into me.
Yeah.
The South Side made me who I am. My grandparents, my parents took time to invest in me. Right. And I feel like I have a responsibility and a duty to pay that forward and give it back. So the way that looks like is electoral campaigns. I educate 16 to 23-year-olds over the summer on justice, equity, public policy, transformational organizing. And I help small businesses through C-suite coaching, workshops, increase their attitudinal fitness so that they're hitting their goals when it comes to their missional alignment. So those are some of the things that I do because, you know, a governor and a mayor have said sometimes I have smart things to say, so I try to give that to other people.
I love it. I love it. That's such a good intro. And I think, you know, safe to say, you know, a little bit about policy and the decisions and the people that they impact in Chicago, a little bit. So before we dive into some of these more structured questions, I want to know kind of what's on your mind. I know walking in here yesterday was a little bit of a heavy day, and how are you feeling? How are you doing? And kind of what's top of mind and heart?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. For the opportunity to just kind of share what's on my heart. So Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr. passed away yesterday, and there aren't words to actually encompass what he meant, not just to Chicago, but to the world. And for a kid like me, oh geez, don't do that, Christian. I'm getting emotional. So for a kid like me, growing up on the south side of Chicago, who didn't have grades that were up to snuff, born to 17-year-old parents, my grandfather, you know, would have the Saturday morning broadcast on TV.
Yeah.
So I would watch Jesse Jackson from Hyde Park, inspire the nation on television. I would see him get in and off of planes with Bill Clinton, and you know, I'm like, this dude is like it, right? You know what I'm saying? You're a young brother from the South Side who grow up in church, and like this man with this powerful rhetorical presentation, but also this very clear, unapologetic commitment to justice and liberation. Yeah. He seemed like a faraway, like mythical figure. Well, lo and behold, my career matures into a place to where I find myself in 2019 working on the census at the county. And anybody that's watching this from Chicago knows that if you walk into Push, you're automatically a volunteer. So like if you walk into Rainbow Push headquarters, like you have a job. Right. Like they're gonna put you to work, like gonna put something in your hand. Yeah. And Reverend Jeanette Wilson, I'll never forget, Reverend was getting ready to encourage people to participate in the census. This was my first time meeting Reverend in person. And she pulls me into the back and she's like, sit down here at this computer, boy, and write these remarks for Reverend. What? I ain't never read a speech. Yeah. I've never written talking points. And I'm about to write talking points. Now, looking back on it, it's like, Christian, it was just a census. Like, take it easy. And in my brain, This is the only black man before Barack Obama to actually compete in a presidential primary twice. And he don't know me from Adam, and I'm supposed to give him something smart to say about the census. Now, what I learned very quickly about speech writing and writing for very gifted orators is all you got to do is give them the sandbox to play in. They ain't going to say most of what you write anyway, you know, because they're gifted. But that moment in time, being able to introduce myself to Reverend and meet him, and then over the past 8 years, just to be able to walk alongside, whether it was with Governor Pritzker or Mayor Johnson, or with my own work as a young organizer trying to inspire people, leading a civil rights organization of my own, like being able to actually sit with him and hear him and see his excitement and his pride around the mayor, around young men like me, seeing the legacy continue, to have him pass, I think you said it on the way up, Anslem, during Black History Month, the 100th anniversary of Black History Month, to have him pass this month in this way, I don't believe in coincidences. I think there's something poetic about that, and holding the tension between grief and fierce determination to ensure what he lived, fought, and died for, what his family sacrificed, time with their father and Mama Jackie, her husband. That legacy deserves to be honored. So that's a little bit of what I'm carrying into this conversation today.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for telling us what's truly weighing on you right now. And I want to honor that. And also, you know, kind of the rest of the flow of this conversation. I think it's important. And I want to talk about, you know, being in the room where it happens. And you know, when I opened up, I talked about oftentimes communities not being in the room where it happens and being recipients, or unfortunately, you know, I say benefactor, but oftentimes benevolent or less positive outcomes are the result of some of these policies. So if you can, tell me an example, or give me an example where you've seen in your organizing work the power of being in that room where policy decisions are made, truly impacting communities, or even on an individual, more granular level. What did that look like? How did you have to force your way to have a seat at the table, or to be in the room where it happens? And what was the result when you did that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'll give an example, a personal anecdotal example of policy harming in an unintended way, and then I'll try to pull an example of what it means to have representation when policy is being formed. So back in the early 2000s, there was a policy passed at the Department of Education level, federal policy passed, called the No Child Left Behind Act. And, you know, without getting too in the weeds, there was one provision that was pretty stringent, no wiggle room, no nuance, and that was the strict prohibition on any drug paraphernalia or any weapons on any public school campus in America. If you were caught with those two things, automatic expulsion. Now, my freshman year was my first time even going to public school. Remember, I was raised in a family of faith. I went to private school, K through 8. And I go to public school, I go on a fishing trip, small little pocket knife that's not even the length of my index finger. During homecoming week, I take off, you know, the pants I had on top of my basketball shorts so that I could participate in gym and hoop. So I set the pants on the bleachers and the knife falls out, unbeknownst to me. Gym teacher finds the pocket, and when I say it's a pocket fishing, when I say like it, not a big, you got your little scissors, you got a nail clipper, and you got like a filing, very small pocket knife. Finds it, turns it in, and the process for me to be removed from public school began. And my dean was like, "Hey, are you scared? Like, is anybody trying to fight you? Like, were you never been in a fight at school, hadn't been suspended, never had detention, and here I am, less than 6 months into my freshman year, being expelled." And my mom had to enroll me in a school for an alternative school for troubled youth. And now I find myself going to school for 3 hours on a screen, pass fail, no teachers, with kids who were, good kids, but kids who were in and out of juvie and in and out of foster homes, struggling with, their own development, which wasn't necessarily my experience at home, but it was now who I was sharing life with in this very backward way of educating children that society had deemed had run amok too much. So that's an example of a policy where, and my dean to this day, he now goes to the church that I go to, and he's so wildly proud. But he talks about how helpless he felt because he had no recourse because the policy was what it was, right? And I remember walking out of Hillcrest High School with my mom and her just sobbing, like just not knowing like what this meant for me. So that's an example of like when policy is made and nuance and people not being in the room that can speak to the complexity of different communities and how different places across the country may need to take a different approach on what it looks like to ensure the learning environment is top tier. That's one anecdotal example. Another example I'll give about the importance of having people in the room. I think what was cool for me when I was working at the state is I was the first state director for community development at the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority. Don't Google it; it's too long. What that meant, though, was all that work that I had done, right, up until that point, organizing in the community, electing good people up and down the ballot, showing up to support people, whether it be direct actions, whether it be people that just all that goodwill I had built allowed me to have a really large network of voices that were about to be pushed into an arena that was maybe not normative. Because with Grant Megan, you've been in the nonprofit space, like sometimes opportunities present themselves and the people that need them most aren't necessarily ready to be able to capture them.
Yeah.
Or don't have the back end support. I mean, that's why some of the stuff with like AI is, there's promise there, right?
Yeah.
Because it can expand the capacity of people actually on the ground doing the work that don't have the finances to have a back end office manager or all of that. So the challenge that presented was we knew people was going to smoke weed. So we knew we were going to have tax revenue to put back into the community. What we didn't know is how we can make sure that we, one, establish trust with those community partners who probably never received state funding, never saw a grant worth $500,000 that they could qualify for. How do we ensure that not only they feel seen, heard, and valued, but they feel supported throughout the process? So part of my work at ICJA, and shout out to Executive Director Dale Reese Adams, she's still there, love her dearly. Doing God's work with a really small staff, trying to get this money out the door. But what we did was we said, how do we bring these cohorts together, make sure that they have the information that they need, create whether they be virtual environments or physical environments for capacity building, right, and learning. And I got to really stand up the infrastructure internally of what that looked like and how we service the community. And what ended up happening was essentially I was dubbed like the community voice consultant inside of the agency, which was like a really cool moment for me because it was like I was trusted to be able to represent people from the South, West Side, Peoria, Rockford, East St. Louis, Perry County, Illinois, some of the most impoverished places across the state had a voice, and that voice was Christian Perry. Man, that was dope. I ain't gonna lie. Yeah. Like that was a really good feeling to know that I had arrived at a place to where what I had to say was trusted by decision makers who had decision making authority, but then also, I say it like this. My career is weird because I got a foot in the street and I got a foot in the house. What does that mean? Anybody will tell you if it's a reason to turn up in the street to protest against injustice, I'm probably there and I probably got my pink blowhorn with me, right?
I like that.
And if there's a state dinner or the Speaker of the House or the mayor is having an affair, I'm probably in that room too. It's a very rare combination of people that are able to transition into halls of power, government and policymaking, but still have credibility in the hood. Yeah. Right. That was something that I was able to, not intentionally, stumble my way into. And I was grateful that there were people elected and people with power that allowed me to use my voice to represent the people I care about.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that. I want to shift a little bit, and this I'm not a podcast guru. You'll see these
Yes.
will
You're
get
doing
better.
great, man.
Yes.
These will get better.
You're
These will
doing
get better.
great, man.
But I wanna introduce Liz too, right? She's my co-founder.
How am I
my
gonna
partner
follow
in crime.
this?
And I set
Honestly.
you up. I set you up. No, I want you to tell everyone a little bit about your background, and because you have been in people and culture and HR systems and on the corporate side for a very long time, and I think it's important to bring to this conversation the other side of it. What's going on? What are you seeing there? So I would love for you just to give a rough overview of who you are. I have a question that I'm going to ask you as well, and then I kind of want to follow up to pull
Yes.
Christian into it. But go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you. And Christian, thank you. Again, tough act to follow, my
No,
friend.
no, you got it.
But this is near and dear to my heart, and Anslem and I go back a little ways, a long way, little long way.
Yeah.
But so I grew up in Peoria, actually. So I'm not a Chicago native, although this is my home.
That's right.
I've moved away, I've come back, and this is always my home. People laugh and they say, "Well, you're moving." And I said, "No, I'll be back."
Just give me a second.
Right, I'll be back. So this is my home, and I feel passionately about all the people of Chicago and, the programs that exist. And much of what you're talking about in the conversation we had the other day, Christian, was really making that connection of things that are happening at a policy level, right? How that translates to our communities and the role that education or nonprofits or corporations play in how that then impacts individuals,
That's
right? And I feel strongly about it. I've worked for large companies here in Chicago that won't remain named, but very strong values-driven organizations, right? That care about people, that care about communities, right? And I resonate with that. I had a number of years in nonprofit, and that's where Anslem and I got to know each other here in Chicago. I feel there's a responsibility, right? And I so appreciate all that you've done and you recognizing the impact, whether you wanted it or not, the impact that you can have in those places because other people are not in those rooms, right? And you're able to bring that voice. So thank you for that. And that you recognize you can be in the street and the house. It's so important. And I feel like, again, for me as a person who's been in human resources and HR and talent and people and culture, that's where these things come together, right? And the advent of AI and what it means, similar in some way, because I feel that when you think about AI, right, and why human in the loop, Anslem, that you started is so important, is think about AI as we're all humans. And what does AI mean? We're all subject to what we hear and what we don't, what we know and what we don't. I'm going to use the reference because we were laughing about it, that pesto dog on the Olympics. I really want him to be real.
Yes.
I do. I really want that dog to be real, and he is
gonna
not.
happen.
Right.
He is
right,
AI.
right.
But you don't know what is real or isn't anymore. And so as humans, we're subject to all of this and trying to understand it. As workers, we're subject to what does this mean for me, whatever my job may be. I may be in a trade, right? And what is AI going to do? Engineering trades are going to skyrocket with the advent of AI. How do we make sure people are ready for that opportunity, right? And the other part of that is that humans are workers.
That's right.
And what does AI mean to me in my work? That's how I make a living. That's how I raise my family. That's how I contribute to my community. So I think what this is so important on all of those levels because all of those things are interconnected, right? The policies that are made and where people are represented or not.
Yeah.
The organizations that are working every day, right? Morning to night. And I've been there with you and I've seen it and I want to continue to do that. Trying to fix maybe things that were not done right or make sure that representation is taken into account. And then hopefully, and again, I do feel there's a responsibility of companies, right, to contribute back and to make that change. So thank you for bringing this forward, Anslem, and thank you for bringing the conversation. Glad to be a part of it, and it's so important. So thank you.
Well, yeah. Thank you for being along the journey with me. I started this company, and as you know this, I was at this intersection, and we've talked a little bit about this, but I want to give you the kind of scoop too to how we got here. For a long time, I worked in nonprofit, and I was kind of climbing the ranks because people told me you're a good leader, right? Like I was a strong communicator. I could get people to go along, but I didn't know how to tie my shoes either. So, but I kind of hit this glass ceiling. I was in Denver, and I knew I wanted to take these nonprofits further. And I went myself. I went back to the University of Denver and got my MBA because I needed to balance out my financial acumen, my business acumen, so I could be a little more dangerous in these rooms talking about budgets, and because I had worked in finance and wanting to really understand the grant making process and how you kind of move the dollar through the nonprofit in a way that it's the most efficient. And what I learned when I did that was, as I started thinking strategically as a systems or finance forward thinker, that there was a gap in the nonprofit space, that there are people that are really mission driven and really focused on serving the community like I was before this MBA and still am. And there are some people sometimes that work on the finance side, like CFOs and such of these organizations, that weren't as connected to the people. They weren't, as you put it, on the street or in the house in many ways. And I was feeling that disconnect throughout my entire career, right? Trying to pull these nonprofits further to be scrappier with what little they have, right? Because we also ask these nonprofits that are doing this impossible, unimaginable work to do it with very little money, right? And I don't want to go on too much of a rant, but they'll write a check and pat themselves on the back and say, hey, go change this neighborhood completely.
Yeah, fixed.
And it's
all
right.
Right.
So feeling that, experiencing that from the inside, but understanding what it meant from a business perspective and how those policies impacted these communities inspired me to launch Mind for Mission. So the whole AI wave, like I was saying, everyone's talking about how fast it's moving, how much it's going to do. What can it do for the organizations that are already struggling to keep up? And that's what leads, this is the perfect segue of the question that I want to kind of frame to both of you. From a corporate side, what you're seeing when it comes to working with staff, maybe folks who are not as comfortable using AI, and from you being in the community, you used the word when we were talking, demystify, which I think is really important when it comes to these new emerging technologies like AI or crypto you mentioned, or anything, because I think for communities of color, there is a lot of fear and apprehension because they have seen the harm that these things can do, and there's just not a lot of education around it. So I want to know, and let's start with you, Christian. What are you hearing? What are you feeling? What is the kind of tone and tenor of AI in community? And the second part of that question is, how do you start to lower those guards or that resistance due to all of the anxiety and fear around this? How do you sort of try to smooth that out to ensure that they're not passengers in the moment, as I say, but pilots driving what happens with AI?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I would say, firstly, education and information lead to safety. So the more that I'll speak in my own identity. The more that Black folks know, right? The more that working class poor folks know about a thing, the less scary or afraid that thing is. Right? You are of that thing. So I'll give an example. People of color, communities that have been, intentionally disinvested in, often have a distrusting relationship with authority, government, things of that nature. So the task of the organizer, right, is, I tell people, good organizers understand part of their job is to connect dots and provide illumination for people, right? And what I have to be able to do is prove to you that the state rep or the state senator or the alder who you see on TV, you read something about in the paper or see it on social, actually works for you, right? Because you pay taxes. You don't have to be afraid of that person, their fancy title, and their nice office. You actually have the right to walk in there and demand a meeting.
Yeah.
Right. But that requires relationship. That requires consistency. And when I think about AI, at least, I feel like I'm hearing things all across the spectrum, right? You got some folks who are not as afraid because they do see it as an opportunity to expand their own capacity, right? So they're dabbling, they're playing around, they're trying to figure out how to increase efficiency. But then I think what I hear more frequently is this concern around jobs. We talked about the dignity of work. Yeah. I hear concerns around profit. Yeah. Right? Because these things have the ability to exponentially increase an entity's bottom line. And with the current crop of tech CEOs of major conglomerates in this country that exist, at this current moment have not shown themselves to be people first. Right? I'll say it that way. Have not shown themselves to be hyper concerned with the conditions on the ground, whether that be of their own employees or the communities that use their devices and their technology ad nauseum. So I think that fear is legitimate and warranted. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
And I think to your point, Liz, around responsibility, I think there's a deep responsibility, not only for government, right? Governments across the state, across the country are trying to look at how to regulate, which I think is not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. People sometimes look at government as something that slows things down. That's the point.
Yeah.
When it's needed,
yeah, that's the point, right? Like, it's great when government moves fast, right? We should be able to get you in and out of the DMV like that. Like, the government should move fast in some regards, but when it comes to real material impacts on people's lives and things being put in black and white, that should take time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we should take our time and make sure we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's. So I think for sure government and our political sphere has a responsibility to ensure that these issues are issues that people are running on. To say transparency, clarity, education has to be top of mind, particularly for those communities who are usually last to get the information. Mm-hmm. But then to your point, Liz, I think there's a corporate responsibility too.
I do too.
I think corporations have, a civic responsibility to ensure that as they leverage the gift of technology to increase what they can do, what's the give back? What's the trust building mechanism? What's the accountability structure mm-hmm. to enable trust to be had between consumer, community member, and large corporation?
Mm-hmm. I think the enablement piece that you just said, right, is key, mm-hmm. right? Because even and I was talking to an organization just this morning about something, and they were talking about how they're people first, and we were talking about AI, mm-hmm. right, from a talent kind of transformation perspective. Right. Mm-hmm. So as they're looking at how to bring in AI, some people are like, oh, my job's going to go away. We've had layoffs, mm-hmm. right? Many companies, and it's because of AI, right? And maybe that's true, right? Mm-hmm. But this particular company that I was talking to said, there may be some of that, maybe if people can't pivot or whatever. Mm-hmm. But the piece about it, I think, Christian, that you said is if you get one exposure to people on what it is versus what it isn't, it's not ChatGPT, right? Right? Mm-hmm. You give them exposure to it, and that's your demystifying, mm-hmm. right? What it is versus what it isn't. And then you educate. Mm-hmm. That, I hope, brings then a sense of empowerment mm-hmm. for all people, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. If you're educating me, and I'm being educated in this moment with both of you and with Anslem in AI, mm-hmm. right? I've learned a ton in the last number of weeks. Mm-hmm. But I think companies that have that lens of how do we make the pivot, how do we make the transformation, but do so with a lens to people, will come out the other side, right? Mm-hmm. They'll have people, the right talent and skills, and motivated and empowered people mm-hmm. doing those roles. Mm-hmm. That's what I hope for. That's mm-hmm. what I see, and many companies are trying to do that. Mm-hmm. Not all. Mm-hmm. I'm not naive to say that. Mm-hmm. But I think the ones that are, mm-hmm. right, they're going to come out stronger. Their people and their talent are going to come out stronger. Mm-hmm. And they're going to have a stronger impact on how this thing goes forward, mm-hmm. which we don't know what it's going to be. Right. Mm-hmm. So on your point about, enablement, mm-hmm. I think those things tie together mm-hmm. from a worker corporate sense, and not even corporate, but from a worker sense. I mentioned the trades before. Mm-hmm. That's going to be hugely impacted.
Yep.
Perfect. The segue, you set it up so nicely. I want to humble brag a little bit about Mind for Mission. I've got to, because I'm hearing you talk, and I feel like We did a really good, intentional, strategic, incredible job of building this team. Not pictured with us today is Kurt Morris. He's our chief technology and transformation advisor as of last week. He's a black man he's been in the culture and talent and DEI, even though that's a little bit of a demonized word these days, that space for a very long time. And he's been in tech for even longer. So he really is someone who gets the intersection of technology and people. And you've been listening to Liz, who's led global billion-dollar organizations at the very top in HR roles like CHRO and chief people officer across the world. So it's someone that understands what's happening at the very top level and how it impacts people all the way down to an individual level. So I was just reflecting on that, hearing everyone talk, and I think it's our jobs to take all of that energy and this talent, and in my experience in the nonprofit mission-driven space, I think I try to tango with my two partners as best as I can and demystify and empower communities, right, with this very powerful tool. And I keep using the word power, but which is why I said it was a good segue. This is going to be the last question that I ask you, Christian, and I kind of want to wrap, is during our lunch, you talked about power and heart. I can't remember the exact quote from Dr. Martin Luther King, but I think it's perfect to bring back up today, especially after yesterday. So please remind me of what that quote from MLK was, and kind of what that means from a policy perspective and also just decision making.
Yeah. So thank you for that. I love my late grandfather, who was an educator, would be so happy that I'm dropping all these King quotes on people. People are taking them in. So what King tells us is that power without love is reckless and abusive. Love without power is anemic and useless. We need both. Right? So what does it mean with this incredibly powerful tool? Right, this tool that, we're millennials, so we remember the time right before the phone. I'm 14, I get the phone. Now you got Google in your pocket. Right. And it was like, man, these kids ain't gonna learn how to research nothing, right? Because they got all this power in their hand. Well, now you got Google on steroids in my 14-year-old's pocket. Right. So what and who is controlling? Right, what it can do, how it can do it, who can get access to it, what levels of tiers, right? You got the pro plan, you got the free plan, like who's tinkering at the top, right? And I think the reason why that quote is important in understanding power is actually one of the things that that working class and sometimes poor people actually don't have a strong grasp of, because most of our relationship with power is an adverse one. Power has always been used to harm. Power has always been used to subvert. Power has always been used to oppress, right? So I think if you guys are taking what we talked about today and going to these corporations, I think one thing you're doing is you're affirming that they have a great deal of power in this moment, and because they have a great deal of power, they have a responsibility to make their way back to love. What does it mean to do this in a way that has deep care and concern for the end user, not just so I give you my email and turn on the automatic subscription? Like, let's move away from that. There are real people who are using these tools who do need capacity. I'm one of them. I got 3 jobs. I'm happy AI is here, right? But also as a writer, somebody who writes speeches, somebody who writes columns for the Chicago Reporter, as somebody who has developed some skill. I don't want AI to be able to write and sound like me
at all,
and come up with theories on justice and inclusion and equity. I don't want. Now, do I want some support? And is it less clunkier than Google? Sure, but what does it mean when these things are being developed to ensure that those who have the least, like it would take these companies and these people with immense amounts of power to meet people where they are, right? And invite folks like you all to the table, into the room to say, hey, here's what love looks like on the South Side with this tech.
Yeah.
What do you think about this? And not that, you know, that you know, sentimental wrote a check to feel good.
Yeah. No patting yourself on the back.
Like, what does it look like to meaningfully invest and partner with these communities with, like I said, now this is Christian's opinion, with the opportunity to lift an entire generation out of poverty. This technology in the richest country on the planet has the opportunity to do wildly amazing things for hunger, for healthcare access, for education. But whose hands is it in?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
If it's in the right hands, I think we'll be okay.
And you know, I think we really need to keep reminding not just us in this room, but everyone that hopefully watches this and well beyond that, that the high tide raises all the ships.
We all do better
Like,
when we all do better.
Curing poverty and hunger and solving life's problems is not going to mean that people who are already eating suddenly don't eat.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So, you know,
In order for me to have, right, that doesn't mean you have to lose. That's a
Exactly.
false
You don't-
dichotomy.
you have not.
exactly.
That's exactly right. When people hear the word equity, like they think, you know, those with power, those with means, sometimes are fed a narrative that, oh, if you give these people something, that means they got to take.
Yeah, right.
No, we live in an abundant world.
AI
Now,
is teaching us that.
man, we live in an abundant world. Now we got to be better stewards of our resources, but we live in an abundant world. And to your point, when we all do better, the rising tide. I'll get off my soapbox in 2 seconds.
Stay
Every time in this country that we have said we are going to respond to the needs of the least of us, the entirety of society benefits.
Yep.
When you pass a Civil Rights Act, when you pass a voting rights law, when you codify women's rights, everybody wins. Everybody's better. Everybody's healthier. You have folks that have access to the things that they need to actually have a shot of making it in this country. So the fact that we're sitting here in 2026 and you still have people that think if Christian and his family from 127th and Halsted have everything to succeed that they need, that means the family that lives a stone's throw away from Wrigley and Lakeview somehow has less. That's a false dichotomy. And it's on us to reject
Right.
that and to call out the lie and say, no, I don't accept that premise. I actually do know that we live in the richest country in the world at the richest time in history. There's more than enough.
Yeah.
All right, I'm off the soapbox.
Absolutely.
I'm off the
I
soapbox.
appreciate it. I appreciate it. To kind of, you know, bring this home, and I would love for you, Liz, to chime in as well, because we've had, I think, a really good discussion. I want to give the viewers some homework. What's the call to action that they can take forward from this conversation? And you can answer that, Christian, any way you want, from getting involved politically or democratically, or just something on their own to get comfortable. What's one thing that you want to ask them to do? And then Liz, same for you.
Whew. One thing.
You know what? If you
He has
need to
3
do
jobs.
two,
He gets 3
if you need
answers.
to do two, do two.
One thing. I mean, so here's one that I've been toying with, and I try to practice it in my own life. I try to practice it with my 14-year-old. Put the phone down. Put the phone down, and actually walk around your block with your dog. Speak to the person that you see that may be on their phone that has their dog. Say hello. And I know that sounds super Mr. Rogers, Sesame Street, whatever.
The GOAT, Mr. Rogers. the
Man,
GOAT.
what? I love Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
So, but the isolation crisis that we are experiencing in this country has somehow been expanded by social media.
Yep.
Technology has actually not helped us feel more connected to each other. I remember when it did.
False sense of connection.
Right. I remember when Facebook first came on the scene, and I wasn't in college yet, and I still got one. You know, like I'm saying, I remember MySpace, Tag, Black Planet. Right. I'm old enough.
Yeah, top
to
8.
man, what?
Yeah.
I'm old enough to remember when it was cool to be able to stay connected with kids from elementary school that you now have moved away from for college or the military. got it. We've lost the thread
Big time.
It's gone way beyond.
along the
time.
way, and somehow, technology is now sometimes serving as a barrier to connection, right? I think we can find our way back.
Yeah.
I think technology, like anything else, is just a tool that can be redirected and used to support us. But right now, when you look at the rates of anxiety, depression, loneliness, particularly for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, oh my goodness. We thought millennials were depressed and anxious.
Yeah.
And it's because they are struggling to figure out what it means to exist outside the algorithm. And I think if I could offer to put the phone down and go touch grass. If you live in Chicago and it's a little cold, just give us a second. It'll be at 40. Go touch grass. Just give us a second. It'll get warm again.
A leaf, whatever.
Man, what? It'll give us just give it a second. So that would be my charge. Put the phone down. Go touch some grass. Go have a real conversation with a real person in your neighborhood. And build community.
Not AI either. Not a conversation.
No,
with
not.
AI.
I mean, dude, this stuff.
I'm not gonna get you started.
A human.
Stuff is scary,
Human. Liz.
So I want to build on that because I see that in, I do a lot of hiring in what I do, right? I'm talking to young people, even people that are long in their careers, right? This notion of, this remote working, and I don't want to get into all of that.
Ton of opinions around remote work.
However, I think for those that came up in the prior era, understanding the value of that
Human connection.
on you as an individual and you as a worker. And again, I kind of said that before. I think we've gotten so used to, and some more than others, being behind the screen, right? I travel a ton. I have a small travel business and I travel for work. So I'm in the airport all the time. And the number of people on their phone, just walking like this, right?
Won't look up.
But I think we've lost that notion of how important that connection is, right? How important the social aspect is, right? Well, why do I have to go 2 miles into the office, right? I'm not saying you need to go 5 days a week, but that ability to connect and have the social aspect and the way that you engage, whether it's in work or some other thing. But I think we've lost sight of the importance of that and the value it brings to an individual in what you do. And one thing I've said before is I think work used to be, back in the days of the older people, it used to be
20th century.
Right.
1900s.
That's the kids. Well, you
the
born in the
1900s.
you were born in the 1900s.
Pre-iPhone, just saying. Fax machines. But it used to be you got work done through relationships. Right? If you think about that for a second, you go into the office and you were at the copy maker, right? And you have a conversation. Oh, hey, can I chat with you about whatever? Right? Now it's work gets done and then there's the people. So I feel like it's shifted focus where we got work done and did those things through our relationships and through our connections and through that. Now it's about getting the work done, whether it's technology or whatever, and then the people.
Wow.
And as a person who's spent decades sort of focusing on people and talent, I think that pendulum has swung too far. So to your point of, take a minute, have a connection. When you're walking down the street or through the airport, right? Lift your head up.
Yes.
Say hello, right?
Yeah.
Again, not to get into the remote working, but go into the office once a month. Right?
A little more.
Engage. And I work remotely. I've worked remote for a long, long time. But whenever I go somewhere, and people that I know this about me, Anslem, you do, whenever I travel, I put where I'm going to be. Right?
People say, hey, I want to connect.
Right.
Yeah.
Because those relationships matter to me, and we grow through our relationships. Definitely. So I feel like, again, I'll post it on Facebook. People know I'm here in Chicago, right? Okay. I think we've lost sight of that. We've become too reliant on technology to live. And I think we need to go back to the social aspect and the people aspect. So I'm following on your thread.
I'm here for it. So go into the office and touch grass. No, I'm kidding. Seriously, this has been fun. This has been.
Hold on. What about you, Anslem?
You want me to give a call to action? I can do that. I can do that. You know, more on what y'all said, like, I'm actually deleting socials. Don't announce when you're leaving the airport. I did. I've got a story up. I'm like, I'm peacing out because this is a false sense of connection, and I need to just reconnect with people and in my orb and in the world at large. But, I'm not asking anyone to do that specifically, whatever, floats your boat. What I am asking, though, is to not think about AI as the enemy right now, because I don't think we can afford to be passengers in the moment. We talked about this when social media showed up. I don't think we understood what it was going to become, and people were just posting pictures of their dog and not realizing that these huge organizations that were running it were going to turn it into what it is right now. I don't think we can afford to behave in that same way. We have to get comfortable using it. We have to get comfortable understanding it, asking questions, and driving the outcomes of what happens with AI. Because if not 10 years from now, the way social media was, it moved not as fast, a little slower. 2 years from now, we are going to be, if we don't act, we're going to wonder what's going on. Where are we in this? What is AI doing? Our jobs are gone. The communities are even further apart. So my ask is just to get comfortable with it. And you can go to mindpermission.com. I'm going to drop it. I'm going to drop it. And we will help you demystify. We've got, I just graduated from Kellogg up at Northwestern in AI, right? AI strategies for business transformation. So plug to them too. But I demystified it for myself and all of us in our team and the team we're building. The purpose is that we can handhold you as much as we need to, or we don't, so you can actually be drivers and pilots in this moment. That's my call to action.
Love it.
Love it.
Love it.
So, we keep talking about talking to your neighbors and while you're walking your dog and going into the office. It kind of wraps this podcast perfectly, which, the name of it is Human in the Loop. We need to make sure that these systems keep the human in the loop. So I guess thank you so much, Christian, for being a part of this today.
Gratitude.
Thank you as always, Liz.
Thank you.
Yes. There will be more, and until next time, that's Human in the Loop. Thank you. Have a good day.